Hey, welcome back to Adult Brain Audiobooks. I'm Graham, one of the narrators. I'm doing an experimental live read here just to show you that we are human and this is how it's done. And I can do it fairly easy. I have all the gear, so might as well. I'm going to share my screen in a bit, but I'm just going to talk to you about what this book is. So this is a book from 1801 by Francis Barrett called the MAGUS, or Celestial Intelligencer. And we're reading the end of part 1, which is chapter 10, The Art of Fascination, Binding, Sorceries, Magical Confections, Lights, Candles, Lamps, etc., being the conclusion of natural magic. Then we're going to move into alchemy, probably talk about the secret of the Philosopher's Stone, the Epistle to Museus, Epistle to the Reader, and that type of thing. And we'll see how far we get with this. What else did I want to say about that? You can go back to the beginning of this book, live. It's just like, day after day, chapter after chapter. You can hit the live tab. For the most part, the description is accurate of what I'm reading that day. I just don't know how far I'll get today with the alchemy chapter, because it's not really separated into smaller ones. I think that's about it. Let's share the screen here and get started. All right, here we go. I'm going to edit it as we go, so it's pretty rough and raw. Let's just get this thing done. Chapter 10 of the Art of Fascination, Binding, Sorceries, Magical Confections, Lights, Candles, Lamps, etc., etc., being the conclusion of the natural magic. Note,
the latter part of this chapter serves as a rule to be observed in the composition of all kinds of mixed experiments, and it is as appropriate to the materials collected for talismans, seals, etc., treated of in our Celestial Magic Book 2, FB.
I just wanted to read that little note there with a slight echo so that I can tell it's a note, not part of the book. We have so far spoken concerning the great virtues and wonderful efficacy of natural things. It remains now that we speak of wonderful power of faculty of fascination. Just going to redo that quickly. Check. It remains now that we speak of a wonderful power and faculty of fascination, or more properly, a magical and occult binding of men into love or hatred, sickness or health. Also the binding of thieves that they cannot steal in any place, or to bind them that they cannot remove from whence they may be detected. The binding of merchants that they cannot buy nor sell, the binding of an army that they cannot pass over any bounds, the binding of ships, so that no wind, though ever so strong, shall be able to carry them out of that harbor. The binding of a mill, that it cannot by any means whatsoever be turned to work. The binding of a cistern or fountain, that the water cannot be drawn up out of them. The binding of the ground, so that nothing will bring forth fruit or flourish in it. Also that nothing can be built upon it. The binding of fire, that though it be ever so strong, it shall burn no combustible thing that is put to it. Also the binding of lightnings and tempests, that they shall do no hurt. The binding of dogs, that they cannot bark. Also the binding of birds and wild beasts, that they shall not be able to run or fly away. And things familiar to these, which are hardly creditable, yet known by experience. Creditable. Excuse me. Now, how is it that these kind of bindings are made and brought to pass? We must know. They are thus done by sorceries, collieries, unguents, potions, binding to and hanging up of talismans, by charms, incantations, strong imaginations, affections, passions, images, characters, enchantments, imprecations, lights, and by sounds, numbers, words, names, invocations, swearings, conjurations, consecrations, and the like. Of sorceries. The force of sorceries are no doubt very powerful. Indeed, they are able to confound, subvert, consume, and change all inferior things. Likewise, there are sorceries by which we can spend the fact. This is that original paragraph there was reminding me of a Monty Python skit. Okay, here we go. Likewise, there are sorceries by which we can suspend the faculties of men and beasts. Now, as we have promised, we will shew that what some of these kind of sorceries are, that by the example of these, there may be a way opened for the whole subject of them. Of course, whoops, that's not right. I'll redo that quickly. Of these, the first is menstruous blood, which, how much power it has in sorcery, we will now consider. First, if it comes over new wine, it will turn it sour, and if it does but touch a vine, it will spoil it forever. And by its very touch, it renders all plants and trees barren, and those newly set die. It burns up all the herbs in the garden and makes fruit fall from trees. It makes dim the brightness of a looking glass, dulls the edges of knives and razors, dims the beauty of polished ivory, and makes iron rusty. It likewise makes brass rusty, and to smell very strong. By the taste it makes dogs run mad, and being thus mad, if they once bite anyone, that wound is incurable. It destroys whole hives of bees and drives them away, if it does but touch them. It makes linen black that is boiled with it. It makes cast their foals by touching them. Let me redo that one. It makes mares cast their foals by touching them with it, and women miscarry. It makes asses barren if they eat of the corn touched by it. The ashes of menstruous clothes cast upon purple garments that are to be washed change their color, and likewise take away the color of flowers. It also drives away tertian and quartan augs, if it be put into the wool of a black ram and tied up in a silver bracelet, as also if the soles of the patient's feet be anointed therewith, and especially if it be done by the woman herself, the patient not knowing what she uses. It likewise cures the falling sickness, but most especially it cures them that are afraid of water or drink after they are bitten by a mad dog. If only a menstruous croth. I'm just going to cheat and if only take the half sentence there. If only the men if only a menstruous cloth be put under the cup. Likewise, if a menstruous woman shall walk naked before sunrise in a field of standing corn, all hurtful things perish. But if after sunrise the corn withers, also they are able to expel hail, rain, thunders, and lightnings, more of which Pliny mentions. Know this, that if they happen at the decrease of the moon, they are much greater poison than in the increase, and yet much greater if they happen between the decrease and change. But if they happen in the eclipse of the sun or moon, they are a most incurable and violent poison. But they are of the greatest force when they happen in the first years of the virginity. For then, if they but touch the doorposts of a house, no mischief can take effect in it. And some say that the threads of any garment touched therewith cannot be burnt, and if they are cast into a fire, it will spread no farther. Also, it is noted that the root of a piney, being given with castor and smeared over with a menstruous cloth, is certainly cureth the falling sickness. Again, let the stomach of a hart be roasted, and to it. Let me read that again quickly. I lost it there. Should scroll up while I can here quickly. Check. Again, Let the stomach of a hart be roasted, and to it be put a perfume made with a menstruous cloth. It will make crossbows useless for the killing of any game. The hairs of a menstruous woman put under dung breeds serpents, and if they are burnt will drive away serpents with the fume. So great and powerful a poison is in them, that they are a poison to poisonous creatures. We next come to speak of Hippomenes. Hippomenes. Scroll up while I can. We next come to speak of Hippomenes, which amongst sorceries are not accounted the least. And this is a little venomous piece of flesh, the size of a fig and black, which is in the forehead of a colt newly foaled, which unless the mare herself doth presently eat, she will hardly ever love her foals, or let them suck. And this is a most powerful philter to cause love, if it be powdered and drank in a cup with the blood of him that is in love. Such a potion was given to Medea by Jason. There is another sorcery which is called Hippomenes, viz., a venomous liquor issuing out of the share of a mare at the time she lusts after the horse. The civet cat also abounds with sorceries. For the posts of a door being touched with her blood, the arts of jugglers and sorcerers are so invalid that evil spirits can by no means be called up or compelled to talk with them. This is Pliny's report. Also, those that are anointed with the oil of her left foot, being boiled with the ashes of the ankle bone of the same, and the blood of a weasel, shall become odious to all. The same also is to be done with the eye being decocted. If anyone hath a little of the straight gut of this animal about him, and it is bound to the left arm, it is a charm, that if he does but look upon a woman, it will cause her to follow him at all opportunities. And the skin of this animal's forehead withstands witchcraft. We next come to speak of the blood of a basilisk, which magicians call the blood of Saturn. This procures, can I guess? It's gonna, oh, this is so interesting. It's gonna turn you to stone. Let me guess. This procures. This procures by its virtue for him that carries it about him good success of petitions from great men. Likewise makes him amazingly successful in the cure of diseases and the grant of any privilege. They say also that a tyke, if it be taken out of the left ear of a dog, and to be altogether black, if the sick person shall answer him that brought it in, and who standing at his feet shall ask him concerning his disease, there is certain hope of life, that he shall die if he make no answer. They say also that a stone bitten by a mad dog causes discord, if it be put into drinks. And if anyone shall put the tongue of a dog dried into his shoe or some of the powder, no dog is able to bark at him who hath it. And more powerful this, if the herb hound tongue. I'm going to redo that quickly. The herb hound's tongue. The herb hound's tongue. And more powerful this, if the herb hound's tongue be put with it, and the membrane of the secondine of a bitch does the same. Likewise, dogs will not bark at him who hath the heart of a dog in his pocket. The red toad, Pliny says, living in briars and brambles, is full of sorceries and is capable of wonderful things. There is a little bone in his left side which being cast into cold water makes it presently hot, by which also the rage of dogs are restrained and their love procured, if it be put in their drink, making them faithful and serviceable. Excuse me. If it be bound to a woman, it stirs up lust. On the contrary, the bone which are. Let me just redo that one again. On the contrary, the bone which is on the right side makes hot water cold, and it binds it so that heat can make it hot while it there remains. It is a certain cure for quartans, if it be bound to the sick in a snake's skin, and likewise cures all fevers of the St. Anthony's fire, and restrains love and lust. And the spleen and heart are effectual antidotes against the poisons of the said toad. Thus much Pliny writes. Also it is said that the sword with which a man is slain hath wonderful power. For if the snaffle or a bridle or a bit or spurs be made of it, with these a horse ever so wild is tamed and made gentle and obedient. They say if we dip a sword with which one... This is interesting. Let me redo this. They say if we dip a sword with which anyone was beheaded in wine, that it cures the quartan, the sick being given to drink of it. There is a liquor made by which men are made of... Let me redo that one too here. There is a liquor made by which men are made as raging and furious as a bear, imagining themselves in every respect to be changed into one. And this is done by dissolving or boiling the brains and heart of that animal in new wine, and giving anyone to drink out of a skull. And while the force of the draught operates, he will fancy every living creature to be a bear like to himself. Neither can anything divert or cure him till the fumes and virtue of the liquor are entirely expended, no other distemper being perceivable in him. The most certain cure of a violent headache is to take any herb growing upon the top of the head of an image, the same being bound or hung about one with a red thread. It will soon allay the violent pain thereof. Of magical lights, candles, lamps, etc. There are made artificially some kinds of lamps, torches, candles, and the like, of some certain and appropriate materials and liquors opportunely gathered and collected for this purpose, which, when they are lighted and shine alone, produce some wonderful effects. There is a poison from mares after copulation, which being lighted in torches composed of their fat and marrow, doth represent on the walls a monstrous deformity of horses' heads, which thing is both easy and pleasant to do. The like may be done of asses and flies. And the skin of a serpent or snake lighted in a green lamp makes the images of the same to appear. And grapes produce the same effect. If when they are in their flowers you shall take a phial, and bind it to them, filled with oil, and shall let them remain so till they are ripe, and then the oil be lighted in a lamp, you shall see a prodigious quantity of grapes, and the same in other fruits. If centauri be mixed with honey and the blood of a lapwing, and be put in a lamp, they that stand about will be of gigantic stature. And if it be lighted in a clear evening, the stars will seem scattered about. The ink of the cuttlefish being put into a lamp makes blackamoors appear. So also a candle made of some saturnine things, such as man's fat and marrow, the fat of a black cat, and the brains of a crow or raven, which being extinguished in the mouth of a man lately dead, will afterwards, as often as it shines alone, bring great horror and fear upon the spectators about it. Of such like torches, candles, lamps, etc., of which we shall speak further in the book on magnetism and mummies, Hermes speaks largely of, also Plato and Seranides. Also Plato and Caranides, and of the later writers Albertus Magnus makes particular mention of the truth and efficacy of these in a treatise on these particular things relative to lights, etc. Of the art of fascination, or binding by the look or sight. We call fascination of binding because it is affected by a look, glance, or observation in which we take possession of the spirit and overpower the same of those we mean to fascinate or suspend. For it comes through the eyes, and the instrument by which we fascinate or bind is a certain pure, lucid, subtle spirit, generated out of the ferment of the pure blood by the heat of the heart, and the firm, determined, and ardent will of the soul, which directs it to the object previously disposed to be fascinated. This doth always send forth by the eyes rays or beams, carrying with them a pure subtle spirit or vapor into the eye or blood of him or her that is opposite. So the eye, being opened and intent upon any one with a strong imagination, doth dart its beams, which are the vehicle of the spirit, into whatever we will affect or bind, which spirit striking the eye of them who are fascinated, being stirred up in the heart and soul of him that sends them forth, and possessing the breast of them who are struck, wounds their hearts, infects their spirits, and overpowers them. Know likewise that in witches, those are most bewitched, who with often looking direct the edge of their sight to the edge of the sight of those who bewitch or fascinate them. Whence arose the saying of evil eyes, etc. For when their eyes are reciprocally bent one upon the other, and are joined beams to beams, and lights to lights, then the spirit of one is joined to the spirit of the other, and then are strong ligations made, and most violent love is stirred up, only with a sudden looking on, as it were, with a darting, a look, a piercing into the very inmost of the heart, whence the spirit in amorous blood, being thus wounded, and carried forth upon the lover and enchanter. No otherwise than the spirit and the blood of him that is murdered is upon the murderer, who if standing near the body killed, the blood flows afresh, which thing has been tried by repeated experiments. So great power is there in fascination that many uncommon and wonderful things are thereby effected, especially when the vapors of the eyes are subservient to the affection. Therefore, cauteries, ointments, allegations, etc., are used to affect and corroborate the spirit in this or that manner. To induce love, they use venereal collyriums, as hippomanes, blood of doves, etc. To induce fear, they use martial collyriums, as the eyes of wolves, bear's fat, and the civet cat. To procure misery or sickness, they use saturnine, and so on. Thus much we have thought proper to speak concerning natural magic, in which we have, as it may be said, only opened the first chamber of nature's storehouse. Indeed, we should have inserted many more things here, but as they fall more properly under the heads of magnetism, mummy, etc., to which we refer the reader, we shall take our leave of the reader for the present, that we may give him time to breathe, likewise to digest what he has here feasted upon. And while he is preparing to enter the unlocked chambers of magic and nature, we will procure him a rich service of most delicious meats, fit for the hungry and thirsty traveler through the vast labyrinths of wisdom and true science. End of the natural magic. The author, having under the title of Natural Magic collected and arranged everything that was curious, scarce, and valuable, as well as his own experiments, as those in which he has been indefatigable, indefatigable. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to cheat and split this sentence up. As those in which he has been indefatigable in gathering from the science and practice of magical authors, and those the most ancient and abstruse, as may be seen in the list at the end of the book, where he has put down the names of the authors, from which he has translated many things that were never yet published in the English language, particularly Hermes, Tristemius, Paracelsus, Bacon, D, Porta, Agrippa, etc., 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 from whom he has not been ashamed to borrow what he thought and knew would be valuable and gratifying to the sons of wisdom, in addition to many other rare and uncommon experiments relative to this art. All right, so that's the end of part 1 of book 1, but this is the part 2, Alchemy. So here's the title page. This true secrets of the Philosopher's Stone, or Jewel of Alchemy, wherein the process of making the great elixir is discovered, to which base metals may be turned into pure gold, containing the most excellent and profitable instructions in the Hermetic art, discovering that value and secret medicine of the philosophers to make men happy, wise, and healthy. Students of chemistry, natural philosophy, etc. D. by F. Barrett, 1801. Okay, here we go. Actually, I should probably read that title. I should probably read that whole title here. My cat wants back on my lap. Come on. The secret of the Philosopher's Stone, or Jewel of Alchemy, wherein the process of making the great elixir is discovered, by which base metals may be turned into pure gold, containing the most excellent and profitable instructions in the Hermetic art, discovering that valuable and secret medicine of the philosophers, to make men healthy, wise, and happy. Epistle to the Museus. Just going to redo that quickly. Epistle to Museus. Thou, O Museus, whose mind is high, observe my words and read them with thine eye. These secrets in thy sacred breast repone, and in thy journey think of God alone, the author of all things that cannot die, of whom we now shall speak. I tell thee here, Museus, to observe our words and read them with thine eye, that is, the eye of thine understanding. For know there are many that hear us speak, that read not the meaning of our words. Wherefore shouldst thou contemplate these mysteries with so much constancy of mind, if thou didst not perceive in them some great good most desirable? Listen, then, O young man, and hear our words. We will shew thee the dangerous precipice of vanity and headlong desire. We will describe to thee the stubborn and fatal will of our passions, even with tears of contrition and heartfelt compassion for thy inexperience. We will lead thee, as it were, by the hand through those labyrinths of vice, wherewith thou art daily surrounded, and however prejudiced thou mightest be against the receiving of our doctrine, yet be assured we have in our possession the magical virtue and power of binding thee to our principles, and making thee happy in spite of thee self. Here is the great secret. Thou shalt say, every man wishes to be happy, which I grant. But my answer is, most men prevent their own happiness. They destroy it by suffering themselves to be governed by the outward principle of the flesh, thinking the greatest good to be in the satisfying of their carnal appetites, or in the amassing together heaps of wealth, whereby they thrust down the meek and poor, raising up the standards of pride, envy, and oppression. These things every day's experience confirms. Nay, there are some so blind that in the possession of much wealth, they think there is nothing beyond it, insomuch that they triumph in lust, oppression, revenge, and contumely. I almost burped there. But how is it, thou wilt say, that seeing man is a reasonable being, he can possibly give up his government so easily? I say, when man suffers the unreasonable and bestial part to deprave him, then he immediately becomes a slave, and the vilest of slavery is that which deprives man of his social virtues. For then, although in the possession of great worldly things, such as houses, estates, and other temporal gifts, yet he becomes an immediate instrument to the prince of this world and the powers of darkness, seeing that those riches he inherits are merely given him in this life to bestow upon others those necessaries and comforts which he himself does not feel the want of, or by which he might, if not blinded by his passions and lusts, secure himself an eternal and incorruptible treasure. But he who possesses treasures without mercy, liberality, bounty, charity, etc., robs the eternal author of all good, of the honor due unto him, and in short is working destruction to his own soul. His riches, instead of benefiting himself and others, eventually and finally terminates as a curse. While he lives here, he is a scourge to society. And after he leaves this, it is plain enough pointed out in the New Testament what will his situation and his condition. What will his situation and his So I had to switch PDFs from this one because this is done. It's a good version, but it's only up to the beginning. This one's, more modern PDF. Obviously, it's been retyped, but there's some typos here, like will be should be will be, not will he. So sometimes the scan and the redo is full of errors. So I'm just going to redo that last sentence here. And I like to use the kind of the original PDF scan, but check. And after he leaves this, it is plain enough pointed out in the New Testament what will be his situation and condition. Therefore, thou young man, thou hast but a few years to live, study how to attain the stone we teach of. It will protract the beauty of thy youth. Though thou shouldst live for centuries, it will ever supply thee with the means of comforting the afflicted, insomuch that when thou hast last attained check. Insomuch that when thou hast attained this truly desirable and most perfect talisman, thy life will become soft and pleasant. No cares, no corroding. Let's do that again quickly. No cares, no corroding pangs, no self torment will ever invade thy mind. Neither shalt thou want the means to be happy in respect of the possession of the goods of this life, but shall have abundantly. But how and from what source all this is to proceed? Out of what thing or matter thou shalt attain thy wished for end? The studying of the ensuing treatise will sufficiently shew. Thy friend, F.B. To the reader, although we do not in any point of science arrogate perfection in ourselves, yet something we have attained by dear experience, by diligent labor, and by study worthy of being communicated for the instruction of either the licentious libertine or the grave student, the observer of nature. And this, our work, we concentrated into a focus. It is, as it were, a spiritual essence drawn from a large quantity of matter. For we can say with propriety that this little treatise is truly spiritual and essential to the happiness of man. Therefore, to those who wish to be happy with every good intention, we commend this work to be their constant companion and study, in which, if they persevere, they shall not fail of their desires in the attainment of the true philosopher's stone. Part the first of Alchymy, its divine origin, and the difficulty. Its divine origin. Of alchemy, its divine origin, etc., difficulty of attaining a perfection in the art, what an adept is, of the Kabbalah, the Rosicrucians, adeptists, possibility of being an adept, likewise that the lapis philosophorum exists in nature, and that proved by sufficient authority, and that they are not all impostors who are alchemists or pretend to it, the madness of the schools proved, and the foolishness of their wisdom, the triumph of chemical philosophy, or the Hermetic art preferable to any other. It is not necessary here to enter into a long detail of the merits of alchemical authors and philosophers. Suffice it to say that alchemy, the grand touchstone of natural wisdom, is of divine origin. It was brought down from heaven by the angel Uriel. Zoroaster, the first philosopher by fire, made pure gold from all the 7 metals. He brought the sun 10 times brighter from the bed of Saturn, and fixed it with the moon, who thereby copulating begot a numerous offspring of an immortal nature, a pure living spiritual sun, burning in the refulgency of its own divine light, a seed of a sublime and fiery nature, a vigorous progenitor. This Zoroaster was the father of alchemy, illumined divinely from above. He knew everything, yet seemed to know nothing. His precepts of art were left in hieroglyphics, yet in such sort that none but the favorites of heaven ever reaped benefit thereby. He was the first to engrave the pure Kabbalah in most pure gold, and when he died, resigned it to his Father who liveth eternally, yet begot him not. That Father gives it to his sons, who follow the precepts of wisdom and vigilance. Let me redo that quickly. That Father that Father gives it to his sons who follow the precepts of wisdom with vigilance, ingenuity, and industry, and with a pure, chaste, and free mind. Hermes, Trismegistus, Geber, Artephius, Bacon, Helmut, Lully, and Basil Valentine have written most profoundly, yet abstrusely, and all declare not the thing sought for. Some say they were forbid, others that they declared it obviously and intelligibly, yet some few little points they kept to themselves. However far off the main point, they lead us of this to be sure, that something valuable is to be drained, as it were, out of reach. Geber is good, Artephius is better, but Flamel is best of all. And better still than these is the instructions we give. For with them a man, following our directions, shall never want gold. Therefore, to be an adept is possible, but first seek the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. This is this is truth incontrovertible. This is truth incontrovertible, and herein lies a vast secret. Seek, and ye shall find. But remember, whatsoever ye ask, that ye shall receive. The Kabbalah, in its utmost purity, is contained in the many precepts given in this book. The Kabbalah enables us to understand, to bring our understandings to act, and by that means to attain knowledge. Knowledge makes us the children of God. God makes whom he pleases adepts in wisdom. To be an adept according to God's will is no contemptible calling. The noble and virtuous brethren of the Rosy Cross holds this truth sacred, that virtue flies from no man. Therefore, how desirable a thing is virtue. She teaches us first wisdom, then charity, love, mercy, faith, and constancy. All these appertain to virtue. Therefore, it is physically possible for all these appertain to virtue. Check. Therefore, it is physically possible for any well-inclined man to become an adept, provided he lays aside his pride of reasoning, all obstinacy, blindness, hypocrisy, incredulity, superstition, deceit, etc. An adept, therefore, is one who not only studies to do God's will upon earth in respect of his moral and religious duties, but who studies and ardently prays to his benevolent Creator to bestow on him wisdom and knowledge from the fullness of his treasury. And he meditates day and night how he maintained the true aqua vita. And he meditates Let me redo that quickly. And he meditates day and night how he may attain the true aqua vita, how he may be filled with the grace of God, which, when he is made so happy, his spiritual and internal eye is opened to a glorious prospect of mortal and immortal riches. He wants not food, raiment, joy, or any other thing. He is filled with the celestial spiritual manna. He enjoys the marrow and fat things of the earth. He treads the winepress, not of the wrath, but of the mercy of God. He lives to the glory of God, and dies, saying, Holy, holy, holy Lord of Sabbath. Blessed is thy name now and forevermore. Amen. Therefore, to be an adept, as we have before hinted, is to know thyself, fear God, and love thy neighbor as thyself. And by this thou shalt come to the fulfillment of thy desires, O man, but by no other means under the scope of heaven. When thy soul shall be made drunk by the divine ambrosial nectar, then shall thy understanding be more clear than the noontide sun. Then, by thy strong and spiritualized intellectual eye, shalt thou see into the great treasury of nature, and thou shalt praise God with thy whole heart. Then wilt thou see the folly of the world, and thou shalt unerringly accomplish thy desire, and shalt possess the true philosopher's stone to the profit of thy neighbor. I say, thou shalt visibly and sensibly, according to thy corporal faculties, not imaginary, not delusively, but real. Helmont, an author of no mean repute, avouches that he has actually seen the stone which converts base metals into gold, that he has seen it with his eyes, and handled it with his fingers, taken from his own relation of the fact, notwithstanding Kircher's declamation against the possibility of obtaining it, noting them all who professed alchemy to be a set of impostors and jugglers, giving no better an exposition of their processes of transmutation than this. An alchemist, says Kircher, procures or desires a crucible to be brought wherein is put lead or any other base metal, which while in fusion he, the alchemist, stirs about with an iron rod, and then, he says, he drops in from between his fingers a bit of gold, and after stirring up for some time and essay being made, gold is found. This indeed very Hello, Sati. Good to see you. Excuse me. This indeed a very lame method of exploding alchemy, but, however, to leave Kircher as much in the dark as he was, we shall give you Van Helmont's declaration, a philosopher of much greater note than this pseudo-chemist Kircher. Van Helmont says, I have divers times handled that stone with my hands, and have seen a real transmutation of saleable quicksilver with mine eyes, which in proportion did exceed the powder which made the gold in some 1,000 degrees. It was of the color. It's all right. Just give me a sec here. Sorry about that. Which in proportion to the powder which made the gold in some 1,000 degrees. It was of the color that is in saffron, being weighty in its powder and shining like bruised glass, when it should be the less exactly beaten. But there was once given unto me the fourth part of 1 grain. I call also a grain the 600th part of an ounce. This powder I involved in wax, scraped off a certain letter, lest, in casting it into the crucible, it should be dispersed through the smoke of the coals, which pellet of wax I afterwards cast into the three-cornered vessel of a crucible upon a pound of quicksilver, hot and newly bought. And presently the whole quicksilver, with some little noise, stood still from flowing, and resided like a lump. But the heat of that argent vive was as much as might forbid melted lead from recoagulating. The fire being straightway after increased under the bellows, the metal was melted. The which, the vessel of fusion being broken, I found to weigh 8 ounces of the most pure gold. Therefore, a computation being made, a grain of that powder doth convert 19,200 grains of impure and volatile metal, which is obliterable by the fire into true gold. For that powder, by uniting the aforesaid quicksilver unto itself, preserved the same at one instant from an eternal rust, putrefaction, death, and torture of the fire, howsoever more I'm going to redo that. Howsoever most violent it was. I'm losing my place here. For that powder. Okay, here we go. For that powder, by uniting the aforesaid quicksilver unto itself, preserved the same at one instant from an eternal rust, putrefaction, death, and torture of the fire, howsoever most violent it was, and made it as an immortal thing against any vigor or industry of art and fire, and transchanged it into the virgin purity of gold. At leastwise was only fire of coals is required herein. By which we see that so learned and profound a philosopher as Van Helmont could not so easily have been made to believe that there existed a possibility of transmutation of base metals into pure gold, without he had actually proved the same by experiment. Again, let the standing monuments of Flamel's library bounty to the poor, liberal, not library. Again, let the standing monuments of Flamel's liberal bounty to the poor through this mean to be seen at Paris every day, such as again, let the standing monuments of Flamel's liberal bounty to the poor through this mean to be seen at Paris every day stand as a testimony to the truth of the existing possibility of transmutation. Likewise, Helmont mentions a stone that he saw and had in his possession which cured all disorders, the plague not excepted. I shall relate the circumstance in his own words, which are as follows. There was a certain Irishman whose name was Butler, being sometime great with James, King of England, he being detained in the prison of the castle of Vilverd, and taken pity on one Ballius, a certain Franciscan monk, a most famous preacher of Gallo Britain, who was also imprisoned, having an erysipelas. Okay, let me go back. Erysipelas. You gotta be kidding me. And taking pity on one. Let me redo that. Erysipelas in his arm. And taking pity on one Ballius, a certain Franciscan monk, a most famous preacher of Gallo Britain, who was also imprisoned, having an erysipelas in his arm on a certain evening, when the monk did almost despair, he swiftly tinged a certain little stone in a spoonful of almond milk, and presently withdrew it thence. So he says to the keeper, reach this supping to that monk. I don't know what happened there. Monk. I can't say monk properly. I swear I read better when I'm live than when I do at home, though. I make so many more mistakes when I'm at home. Maybe this is forcing me to focus or something. Reach this supping to that monk, and how much soever Reach this supping to that monk, and how much soever he shall take thereupon, he shall be whole at least within an hour's short space. Reach this supping, I shouldn't have spoke so soon. Reach this supping to that monk, and how much soever he shall take thereupon, he shall be whole at least within a short hour's space. Which thing even so came to pass, to the great admiration of the keeper and the sick man, not knowing from whence so sudden health shone upon him, seeing that he was ignorant that he had taken anything. For his left arm, being before hugely swollen, fell down as that it could scarcely be discerned from the other. On the morning following, I, being entreated by some great men, came to Vilverd as a witness of his deeds. Therefore I contracted a friendship with Butler. Soon afterwards I saw a poor old woman, a laundress, who from the age of 16 years had labored with an intolerable megrim, cured in my presence. Indeed, he, by the way, lightly dipped the same little stone in a spoonful of oil of olives, and presently cleansed the same stone by licking it with his tongue. So I had to burp up my coffee. Now I'm going to cheat, and finish that sentence. And laid it up into his snuff box. But that spoonful of oil he poured into a small bottle of oil, whereof only one drop he commanded to be anointed on the head of the aforesaid old woman, who was thereby straightway cured and remained whole. Which I attest I was amazed, as if he was become another Midas. But he, smiling, said, My most dear friend, unless thou come hitherto, so as to be able by one only remedy to cure every disease, thou shalt remain in thy young beginnings, however old thou shalt become. I easily assented to this, because I had learned from the secrets of Paracelsus, and being now more confirmed by sight and hope. But I willingly confess that the new mode of curing was unaccustomed and unknown to me. I therefore said that a young prince of court, Viscount of Gaunt, brother to the Prince of Epistle, of a very great house, was so wholly prostrated by the gout that he thenceforth lay only on one side, being wretched, and deformed with many knots. He, therefore, taking hold of my right hand, said, Wilt thou that I cure the young man? I will cure him for thy sake. But, I replied, he is of that obstinacy that he had rather die than drink only one medicinal potion. Be it so, said Butler, for neither do I require any other thing than that he do every morning touch this little stone thou seest with the top of his tongue. For after 3 weeks from thence let him wash the painful and unpainful knots with his own urine, and thou shalt soon afterwards see him cured, and soundly walking. Go thy ways, and tell him with joy what I have said. I therefore, being glad, returned to Brussels, and told him what Butler had said. But the potentate answered, Go, tell Butler that if he shall restore me as thou hast said, I will give him as much as he shall require. Demand the price, and I will willingly sequester that which is deposited for his security. And when I declared the thing to Butler, on the day following he was very wrath, and said, That prince is mad or witless and miserable, and therefore I will never help him. Nor neither do I stand in need of his money, neither do I yield, nor am I inferior to him. Nor could I ever induce him afterwards to perform what before he had promised. Wherefore I began to doubt whether the things I had before seen were dreams. It happened in the meantime that a friend overseer and master of the glass furnace at Antwerp, being exceeding fat, most earnestly requested of Butler that he might be freed from his fatness. Unto whom Butler offered a small piece of that little stone, that he might once every morning lick or speedily touch it with the top of his tongue. And within 3 weeks I saw his breast made more straight or narrow by one span, and him to have lived no less whole afterwards. Wherefore I began again to believe that the aforesaid gouty prince might have been cured, according to the manner Butler had promised. In the meantime I sent to Let me redo that again. In the meantime, I sent to Vilverd to Butler for a remedy in the case of poison given me by a secret enemy. For I miserably languished, all my joints were pained, and my pulse, vehement, being at length become an intermitting one, did accompany the faintings of my mind and extinguishment of my strength. Butler, being still detained in prison, commanded my household servant, whom I had sent, that forthwith he should drive me into a small bottle of oil of olives. Got that wrong. Let me redo that quickly. I will just go back to the beginning of that. Butler. Excuse me. Check. Butler, being still detained in prison, commanded my household servant, whom I had sent, that forthwith he should bring unto him a small bottle of olive of oils. Oh, come on. Butler, being still detained in prison, commanded my household servant, whom I had sent, that forthwith he should bring unto him a small bottle of oil of olives. I'm not going to be able to say that. Butler, being still detained in prison, commanded my household servant, whom I had sent, that forthwith he should bring unto him a small bottle of oil of olives, and his little stone, aforesaid, being tinged therein, as at other times, he sent that oil unto me. He told the servant that with only one small drop of the oil I should anoint one place of the pain, or all of the places, if I would, the which I did, and yet felt no help thereby. In the meantime, my enemy, according to his lot, being about to die, bade that pardon should be craved. So in the meantime, your enemy was dying, and in the meantime, my enemy, according to his lot, being about to die, bade that pardon should be craved of me for his sin. So I knew that I had taken poison, the which I had suspected, and therefore also I procured with all care to extinguish the slow venom, which, through the grace of God favoring me, I escaped. Seeing that afterwards many other cures were performed upon certain gentlewomen, I asked Butler why so many women should be cured, but that I, while that I sharply conflicted with death itself, being also environed with pains of all my joints and organs, should not feel any ease. But he asked with what disease I had labored. And when he understood that poison had given a beginning to the disease, he said that as the cause had come from within to without, the oil ought to be taken into the body, or the stone to be touched with the tongue. Because the grief being cherished within, it was not local or external. And also observed that the oil did by degrees unclothe itself with the efficacy of healing, because the little stone became. Go back to here. I'm losing focus. And also observe that I'll start there. Scroll up. And also observe that the oil did, by degrees, unclothe itself with the efficacy of healing. As the little stone being lightly tinged in it, it did not pithily charge the oil throughout its whole body, but had only ennobled it with a delible, or obliterable. I'm going to cheat. And cut the sentence in half. But had only ennobled it with a delible or obliterable besprinkling of its odor. For truly that stone did present in the eyes and tongue sea salt spread abroad or rarefied. And it is sufficiently known that salt is not to be very intimately mixed with oil. This same man also cured an abbess who for 18 years had had her right arm swelled with an entire deprivation of motion, and the fingers thereof stiff and unmovable, only by the touching of her tongue with this admirable stone. Okay, I'm just going to finish off this page and then stop at the next part for tomorrow. But very many being present witnesses of these same wonders did suspect some hidden sorcery or diabolical craft, for the common people have it for an ancient custom that whatsoever honest thing their ignorance has determined not to comprehend, they do, for a privy shift of their ignorance, refer the same to be the juggling of an evil spirit. But I could never decline so far, because the remedy was supposed to be natural, for neither words, ceremonies, nor any other suspected thing was required. For neither is it lawful, according to man's power of understanding, to refer the glory of God, shewn forth in nature, unto the devil. For none of those people had required aid of butler, as from necromancy any way suspected. Yeah, the thing was at first made trial of with smiling. Yeah, the thing was at first made trial of with smiling and without faith and confidence. Yet this easy method of curing shall long remain suspected by many. For the wits of the vulgar being inconstant and idle, they do more readily consecrate so great a bounty of restitution unto diabolical contrivance than to divine godness. Come on, finish it off, Graham. Come on. Yet, for the wits of the I gotta turn this up a bit. For the wits of the check, check, check. For the wits of the vulgar being inconstant and idle, they do more readily consecrate so great a bounty of restitution unto diabolical contrivance than to divine goodness, the framer, lover, savior, refresher of human nature, and the father of the poor. And these vile prejudices are not only inherent in the common people, but also in those that are learned, who rashly search into the beginning of healing, being not yet instructed, or observing the common and blockish rules, because they are always wise as children, who have never gone over their mother's threshold, being afraid of every fable. For they who have not hitherto known the whole circuit of diseases to be included within the spirit of life, which maketh the assault, or if they hereafter, reading my studies by the way, shall imprint on themselves this moment or concernment of healing, nevertheless, because they have been already afore accustomed, from the very beginnings of their studies to the precepts of the humorists, they will easily at length depart from me and leap back to the favorite bigotry and ancient opinions of the schools. But now we will hasten to the manner of preparation necessary to qualify a man for the attainment of these sublime gifts. All right. Thank you there for being here and for watching this read on alchemy and some other crazy stuff in this book. So like and subscribe, all that stuff. Of course, we've got all our stuff on Spotify and Audible. A good way to help the show. Share it. Help not the show, but our audiobooks. Share it, etc. And thank you for being here. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good day.